a lot of more interesting things to talk to them about than before. During the last few months since I was diagnosed with Aspergers Syndrome. My mother told me that she thought I had autism when I was a little kid, and my parents took me to a hospital to be evaluated, and the results came back out to be either negative or inconclusive, so I don't know what the fuck was up with that. Fast forward to June 2, 2009, I see someone and it only takes 45 minutes before I'm officially diagnosed with Asperger's disorder. Why the fuck do they call it a disorder? Most of the time, when a kid has autism, it'll either evolve into high-functioning autism or Asperger's syndrome. And what's the difference between high-functioning autism and Asperger's syndrome? How the fuck do I know? Nobody has bothered to explain this shit to me. My parents were happy when I was able to get myself out of that autistic coma, but that led to my weird eccentric habits, which drove them crazy. Along with my narrow interests, and one of my earliest intense interests that I had was having a fascination with trains. I remember I kept pressuring my parents to take me on a train ride when I was 8 years old, and I told my mother that it would be neat if I got to see someone get run over by the train while I was riding it. And she was horrified when I said that, and she acted as though something was wrong with me. I won't forget the time when I drew a picture of a naked man taking a piss, and I showed that to my mother, and she was horrified about that. I had to do some things to make myself feel better after going through the most horrible experiences of my life, and part of that was caused by the bullies who picked on and tormented me when I was going to school. I just met someone whose grandson who has Asperger's Syndrome, and he was picked on so bad by bullies, he couldn't even go to school anymore, and he had to get homeschooled. It sickens me when I hear about this shit, but so many school administrators say that there's nothing that can be done about bullying in schools, which is a complete load of fucking bullshit. It's about time that these pieces of fucking filth, conformist pieces of fucking filth get arrested for this shit and put them where they belong. Juvie. A repeat offender should be given the death penalty, and they should be executed by being tied to the railroad tracks and let a train run them over. But then again, I feel that is way too much of a peaceful death for them to experience. It would be better if they were executed by having gasoline poured on them and lighting them on fire. And that should be, and having and then there should be a reality-based TV show that shows bullies getting executed by having gasoline poured on them and setting them on fire. And I can almost guarantee that if these conformist pieces of fucking filth were executed by having gasoline poured on them and setting them on fire, would bring an end to bullying in schools once and for all. Anyway, I remember once during the summer when I would go to the community swimming pool, and it was located right next to the railroad tracks, and every time a train would come by, I would get out of the pool just to watch the train go by. Then I got a copy of the train schedule, and I would get out of the pool just to wait for the train to come by. And on Saturdays, I would go to the gas station near the train station, and I really enjoyed watching the trains go by, but I would rather ride the train. I kept begging and begging my parents to take me on a train ride, but they just kept blowing it off until finally my father took me on a train ride to Chicago. As soon as I got there, I wanted to walk around the station to look around, but my father wouldn't let me do that, as all he wanted to do was get on the next train going home ASAP. When I was 10 years old, I was able to convince my parents to let me take a train ride to Geneva, Illinois, and that was fun. I found a park right next to the Fox River, and at one end of the park was located right next to the railroad tracks, and it was fun to watch the trains go by. When I told my mother about that park, she got all hysterical and told me that I shouldn't be going there, and she told me that I would be raped by a bunch of pedophiles who hang out there. I didn't see any pedophiles that were there while I was there. I had to wait until I was close to 16 years old before my parents would let me take a train ride to Chicago on my own, because they didn't think that it was safe for me to go to Chicago on my own, because they told me that there were way too many homosexuals, black people, and pedophiles walking the streets. And if that's not enough, my mother reminded me of John Wayne Gacy. I told her that John Wayne Gacy is in jail and he wouldn't be able to hurt me. But then she told me that there are so many more people like him walking the streets. Well, anyway, I was so happy when I was able to ride the trains throughout the Chicago area, which included going to Kenosha, Wisconsin, and Michigan City, Indiana. And in Michigan City, end of the train goes right down the middle of the street, and that's fucking cool. There was another time when I was 15 years old, and I told my father that I would be late for dinner because I wanted to ride my bike to see an Amtrak train come by, and he told me, "When are you going to get out of that baby shit?" And that wasn't the first time he said that to me, so I handled it like any intelligent person would, by losing my temper, going into a rampage, and cussing and screaming at the top of my lungs. My father constantly told me that being interested in anything like looking at the moon or the sunrise or sunset or trains, don't put bread on the table and it doesn't pay the bills. Amazingly, almost everyone I knew who says that type of shit has trouble paying their bills. My father believed that life should be about being boring, mediocre, and stupid, which reminds me, if a person who has an intense interest in trains is diagnosed with Aspergers Syndrome, then people who believe that life should be about being boring and mediocre should be diagnosed with assholism syndrome. Now, where do most boring and mediocre people end up? Florida. Which was forced on my throat because my parents decided to move there, and they didn't have any trains to ride either until Tri-Rail started, which was still 10 fucking miles from where I lived. When I moved to Minnesota, there weren't any trains to ride until the Hiawatha Light Rail Line started in 2004, and on January 17 of this year, I got to ride the North Star train for the first time, and I decided to take a train to Elk River, and I was expecting the train to be near downtown, but it was in the middle of fucking nowhere. When I got to Elk River, I wanted to eat at an all-you-can-eat Chinese buffet, but it was a 45-minute fucking walk just to get there, and I only had an hour to eat my food before I had to rush back to catch the last train back to Murderopolis for the day. They should have all-you-can-eat buffets in train stations. That would be fucking cool. They should have abortion clinics inside train stations too. There should be an abortion clinic inside the mall, and they should open an abortion clinic inside the Mall of America. That way, a pregnant woman from Elk River can take the North Star train, and then transfer to the Hiawatha Light Rail Line, and take the train to the Mall of America to have an abortion, and then she can celebrate the thousands and thousands of dollars she will save by not having the baby, and then by going shopping. And then she'd be relieved knowing that having an abortion prevents postpartum depression. And then she can take the train back to Elk River. My joy had to come to an end as soon as I got back to Murderopolis, because the Minnesota Viking fans were just getting back from the game, and it was the playoff game. Another people who should be diagnosed with assholism syndrome. I got to see a guy getting arrested at Target Field Station. I put that on YouTube. If that's not all, another guy was so drunk he threw up, and it was a liquidy type of vomit, and he got most of it all over his pants. When I saw that, I just wanted to unzip his pants and suck his dick. Not. This other girl was so drunk, she kept falling down, and her friend had to try to hold her up against the wall. This goes to show how good football is, because it builds character. Not. Now, I don't only love trains, but I enjoy making videos of trains, and then I put them on YouTube, because trains are fucking cool. But if you've seen any of my YouTube videos, I say trons are fucking cool.
And you can catch more of the Reverend Pat D's commentaries on trains on his YouTube channel. Is there a place we can all look for that? What do I type in to find you?
Just YouTube Alt-Mind, or if you can't find it there, search Reverend Pat D.
Reverend Pat D on YouTube.
Trains.
All right, and speaking of difficult to define performers, our next one...